Lori and David will speak on later. But I just wanted to share a couple things, some of my favorite slides, and I'm not going to be bashful and say that I've picked some of these and just throw them in. This is one of my favorite ones. I know Natalie's seen it before, but every time I look at it, I see something different, and it's just an incredible perspective to realize how large this continent actually is. And it really is when you have to fly or try to travel anywhere. So in Africa, there are several economic communities that are divided up. I would say out of these, and again, my colleagues can speak a little bit more for ECOWAS, but I would say ECOWAS and SADC and probably the EAC are the most prominent participators and ones that we hear about the most. But there are definitely regional locations where you would want to consider entering the market and then expanding from there, kind of based on some of these, not all, some of these economic communities. And this I just wanted to include for perspective, especially on Nigeria. It's really incredible, and I'm sure David will talk about it more. Please ignore the losses category that hasn't been updated at all for anything recent that's occurred. But as you can see, the population density in some areas are obviously easily connected to their economies. So here, let's talk about commercial service in sub-Saharan Africa, and I think this is a good segue into some of my colleagues' presentations. You can see where the flag is. Those are commercial service offices. We have several across sub-Saharan Africa, and then of course we work with the State Department and our econ colleagues quite closely in what we call partner posts, where we can still offer our services and they can help any exporters in these countries. So I just wanted to highlight some of that, but let me get into South Africa a little bit. And as you know, I'm in Johannesburg. I would say 95% of most of South Africa's manufacturing occurs in Gauteng, which is the province, right here where Pretoria and Johannesburg meet. And there's an incredible amount of opportunity. So for major ports of entry, Durban, Cape Town, and Port Elizabeth are really the major ports. Most of those coming into Durban. There's recently a storm which affected a lot of rail and transit cargo operations, but they're working on fixing that quickly. Sorry. All right. Here, so South Africa, market strengths. This kind of differs from some of our other colleagues. Low market entry. It's a well-established market. There's major infrastructure here. Large affinity for U.S. brands. When we ask people, what do you want to see here in South Africa, I would say over 75% of the top 20 companies that they list are American brands. So they appreciate that, and that's we're sitting here begging for U.S. companies to come here, and I'll get into it. There's opportunity, not just major brands, but across the spectrum. As I've also had the opportunity to incorporate some slides from American Chamber of Commerce. So just as you've seen, Natalie and our USIAC in St. Louis has partnered with local agencies or organizations. We do the same with American Chamber, and they provide some really interesting statistics that I think will be more interesting to you. So I'm not going to go through each one of these slides as you can read, and I'm sure you can all we can share these with you at a later date if you're interested. And everybody is slide showed out at this point of webinars. So there's many opportunities in South Africa. There are some challenges. So I want to be very clear with some of the challenges entering. Right now, I'm speaking to you. The power might cut out. We're currently running on generators. They have load shedding. They have that's what they call it. It's a very difficult challenge in South Africa. Definitely power. I would say power way over water is a huge challenge. It's going to, if I drop off, I apologize. But most of we're talking major manufacturers like Ford, Caterpillar, they all complain about load shedding. So it's something to consider, but it's definitely not a barrier to entry. Of course, you have national debt and weakening exchange rates. The exchange rate fluctuates. To put it in a perspective, from my experience, that'll make it most applicable. Well, I bought a car and it was like 14.5 to the dollar, 14.5 rand to the dollar. Then 2 weeks later, it's 16.5. Now you can imagine if you buy a new vehicle, you're talking about thousands of dollars. Now, if you're buying industrial equipment or aircraft, and you get in millions of dollars. The exchange rate is a hindrance. A lot of companies hold U.S. dollars. They buy them when the rate's favorable and hold them, but that's not necessarily true for a lot of companies when you want to get paid to export. So, of course, low growth rate and unemployment. But let me go on to some other things I want to discuss. Here are the opportunities. And right after that, this is our commercial service slide about all the opportunities for growth in different sectors, and I hope that they apply to many of you. And then following this, I have one for the American Chamber, which gives us the best feedback because they're the members these are the companies, the U.S. companies, small and medium and large, that are operating here in South Africa, and they tell us what their challenges are. So I kind of want to go on to that. And again, happy to share these slides if you want to review them later. So these are some of the American Chamber slides. They put out a white paper, and they do this every year. And we also just hosted an event with American Chamber where the U.S. mission in South Africa briefs all of the companies here in the market on what we think the challenges are. And we had every different organization and agency came up and gave a different presentation. So here are the systemic policy issues in Africa, but these are also major opportunities in South Africa, excuse me. But I mean, energy and safety and security are huge, but the digital economy here is growing. We've done many single company promotions over the last couple months, weeks even, for digital, which also cybersecurity, it crosses over into cybersecurity. So there's lots of opportunities. Some of the challenges, IP challenges, you're going to encounter those across the continent. And then another one, triple BEE is something that you would need to consider if you enter the market there. So to give you a little bit of background, obviously on the history of Africa, or South Africa, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but basically following apartheid, we have different business concessions and things that need to make sure that all of society is participating in business, and there are consultants available to help with that. And some of the companies I already mentioned, Ford, Caterpillar, are just pillars of perfect examples of how to do this. And Natalie's also working on a trade mission, if I can put a plug in for it, next year in the summer. And there's a lot of opportunity to come and tour some of these facilities and see all the different companies and how they work, and they'll make plenty of introductions. And I see Natalie on the screen, so she's going to cut me off, and that's fine. So I'll go ahead and just share these. Do I have about a minute? Is that okay? And then I can wrap up. Thank you, Natalie. So here again from their slides, there's currently 662 U.S. companies in South Africa that AmCham is aware of. There are probably many more, and you can see how many people they employ. And all of them have corporate social responsibility programs. And I mean, they do a lot of good in the community, and the South African government recognizes that. So I just want to go, here's another one that you'll want to take a quick look at is, again, this is U.S. American Chamber of Commerce in South Africa. They have the other services is one that I've asked them to drill down on, because I think that will be very beneficial to you. But these are the U.S. companies and the industries in which they're operating. And again, just to prove, and I think I'm going to end on this slide for time. Just to show you that we're not just working with the Fords and the Cats that I just mentioned. We work with all businesses, and we're more than happy to help. Please don't hesitate to contact us, or more importantly, I should say, is contact Natalie and her team in St. Louis, and she'll put you in touch with the right office here in Sub-Saharan Africa. Thank you again for your time, and I will stop. All right, let me know if you have any questions, and I will be on afterwards in the chat to help answer best I can.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you so much. I know there's a lot more to say about each of your markets, but I want to be fair to all of them. So after South Africa, we're going to be going to Ghana. And our commercial officer there, Lori Kelleher, turn it over to you, Lori.
Thank you, Natalie. Can I just have a sound check, and can you see my screen okay?
We can.
Great. Well, thank you all for joining us today. We really appreciate your interest in the region. My name is Lori Kelleher. I'm a commercial officer here in Accra, Ghana, and thank you for the chance to tell you a few words about Ghana. What I found when I got to post here is that Ghana is often one of the first stops of US companies when they're exploring Africa, certainly West Africa. And there are lots of good reasons why that's the case. English speaking, of course. The country is known as being a democratic and stable. As well, just logistically, it's very easy to get to Ghana. We have direct flights daily on both Delta and United from the United States. And of course, we have Atlantic Ocean ports, so shipping things to Ghana is relatively easy compared to some of the landlocked or farther away markets on the continent. So we, again, are often in our office contacted by people that are first-time exporters to Africa to just explore the opportunities. And what we also find is that there's a strong degree of people-to-people connections between Ghana and the United States for historical reasons. For many people in Ghana have studied and had their education in the United States. So we find that there's a lot of traffic back and forth between students and business people, and that often ends up evolving into doing business in both directions, including in Ghanaian investment in the United States at this point. So a few other items I'd just like to highlight in terms of reasons to consider Ghana is it's a growing economy. It was one of Africa's fastest growing economies prior to COVID. There's a very robust and growing working and middle class here. It's a very young population. They're very digitally connected and very much interested and plugged into US products and services. So you come to this market, as Michael mentioned as well for South Africa, with a customer base that's familiar with US goods and services and knows them and is interested in having them. We have about 120 US companies that are currently doing business here, about 30 active investment projects. And Ghana is also known as sort of a gateway to West Africa and increasingly a gateway to the emerging African Continental Free Trade Area. We host the secretariat for that initiative. So we're becoming sort of the policy center for the evolution of trade policies and market openings related to that new monumental free trade area, which will be the largest one in the world. And it's just under development, being negotiated and being implemented right now. We have so much commercial interest in Ghana at present. We just had our deputy secretary out here last week who was joined by a US Chamber of Commerce delegation. And in 2 weeks, we'll have a business delegation from Minnesota. The Minnesota Africans United group is coming out as well. So lots of companies coming out and exploring lots of different sectors, doing government-to-government meetings, partnering with local companies. I wanted to name just a few of the best prospect sectors that we find that we get a lot of inquiries about, but where we also see the best opportunities here. Ghana has really a large potential in agribusiness and food processing. They are known for processing cocoa and coffee in particular, but there's lots of other things that can be developed here, from poultry to other commodities. And we find a range of US goods and services providers exploring the agribusiness sector. Consumer goods, as I mentioned, are very popular here and widely available American goods in many of the stores here. So that's nice as an expatriate to be able to find your common products that you're used to in the United States. The energy sector and mining sectors are very large here in Ghana because they are competing with South Africa for the title of being largest gold producer. And they also have some offshore oil and gas that they've developed in recent years with US investment, among other investments. ICT is also very much growing here. It's one of the booming sectors in the economy, and that extends from applications for the financial services sector to equipment and sales to support banking, to support education, to support healthcare. So it's very wide ranging, and we're happy to talk to anyone who wants to engage with us on sort of the digital economy and how you can be involved in Ghana. The financial services sector is booming here in Ghana. This is a very forward-leaning population in terms of digital payments, for example. Franchising is very popular here, and US brands and franchising are growing, and we have some special initiatives to support that development here in the country. And maybe I'll stop there on sectors, but really it's very diverse, and there are many different opportunities that are emerging and many things that are both sophisticated and still developing and still have a lot of fresh opportunities. Michael mentioned some challenges in South Africa. We certainly are at a particularly challenging moment here in Ghana. We are experiencing very high inflation, as is happening elsewhere around the globe at present. We have a currency depreciation issue going on here as well. And there are some government budget deficit issues that are really a challenge and have curtailed for the medium term government expenditures on procurement and large projects. But we are here to navigate that with you, to help you understand what's happening, to help you find good partners that are still doing business, particularly in the private sector, despite those macroeconomic headwinds. That's our job. This is what we look out for. So what we're finding is, despite this challenging moment, people are still really exploring and pursuing business opportunities, again, particularly in the private sector. I would just refer you to our website, trade.gov/Ghana, where you can pull up, as Natalie mentioned, the country commercial guide that will give you a great overview of the market. And we have ongoing market intelligence that we create throughout the year to catch you up on developments in the meantime. And of course, we offer all the range of services that Natalie mentioned in terms of helping you find partners here on the ground. I'll stop there, but we welcome your interest in Ghana and hope to be able to assist you here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Laurie. I know that's a lot to cover in very little time, and there's a lot more to be said about Ghana. So thank you very much. I appreciate all the great information. And then to finish out our tour of Sub-Saharan Africa, we're going to go and talk to you about doing business with or in Nigeria with our commercial officer there, David Russell, who's joining us from Lagos.
Hi. Sound check, and can everyone see my slide?
We can hear you. The slide may be coming up in a little bit. Let's see.
Let's try it one more time.
You're good to go.
All right. Thank you. I won't. Thank you to everyone who made this happen. I won't name everyone by name. I'll say what we say here in Nigeria. Let me stand on existing protocol. So top line on Nigeria, it's Africa's largest economy, and it's undergoing a period of a fairly substantial change. So with that change comes opportunity. Like my colleagues mentioned, there's also some challenges that need to be navigated, but with the right approach, the right company, there are opportunities to be had in Nigeria. The economy here has traditionally been based on the rich resources in the country. Nigeria has the 9th largest area of arable land in the world of any country, and perhaps more famously, it has extensive oil and gas deposits, which have been the major driver of the economy for a number of decades. The government here has made attempts to diversify the economy away from its dependence on oil under President Buhari, the current president, who is term limited and will be leaving in March of this year. He prioritized self-sufficiency, economic growth, promoting backwards integration, import substitution, local content as a way to diversify the economy. Obviously, this is a challenge for many businesses, but At the same time, it has opened up the economy to new possibilities as the protectionist measures seek to develop new industries within the market. Protectionism is definitely not the only challenge that Nigeria faces. A dearth of infrastructure is pretty prevalent. And Michael was mentioning water and electricity being some big ones. Electricity is definitely a big problem here. Just the grid and the ability to generate the power necessary is definitely lacking and not supporting the population. Some other places where you'll see some infrastructural gaps that can affect your ability to do business are in transportation. The roads linking cities and even inside cities can be pretty poor. And also the ports really can't support the amount of imports that the country does, and they can definitely be a hindrance for folks who are looking to import goods into the country. Speaking of the ports, that's a good segue into corruption, which is fairly pervasive in Nigeria, all the way from low level traffic cops on the corner to I won't name names how high up it goes, but it is fairly pervasive. So it's something that you have to deal with when it comes to things like product registrations or again, the ports. There's some various touch points where corruption can affect your ability to do business. Another large challenge is limited foreign exchange due to decreased oil revenue. The access to foreign exchange has constricted. Those selling in US dollars are going to have a little bit of trouble finding buyers who can afford products because there's two parallel markets going on when it comes to foreign exchange. The one that the central bank maintains at a lower exchange rate, and then the street market value, which is much higher. So most folks who are importing into the country, we're paying for services in dollars, are going to have to pay at that higher price, that higher street price, because official access to foreign exchange is pretty difficult. And then finally, insecurity, depending on where you're operating. You can see the map there on the screen. There's various regional insecurities. I won't get into those, but just something to keep into mind. So those selling in the market, especially goods, those who can navigate those challenges will find significant demand, and in many cases, depending on your product, limited competition, as Nigeria is often not the first market that people consider. Those who have a different model where there's localization or looking to locate a business or invest in Nigeria, they'll find it a little bit easier to enter the market. The government's very keen to see inward investment with this new diversification initiative, and there's several initiatives within the country to promote investment. But what really draws people to Nigeria is the substantial demand, especially for U.S. products and services. There's a number of Nigerian firms looking to partner with U.S. companies throughout the population, but especially in the middle class. There's a proclivity towards U.S. goods. There's a perception of quality, of dependability there. There's an affinity between our two countries, definitely. We both speak English, like both of the colleagues' countries in Ghana and South Africa, but there's also a large Nigerian diaspora population in the U.S. There's over 500,000 Nigerians living as Americans in the U.S. So there's definitely a lot of connection between our two countries. However, as much as they appreciate the quality of U.S. goods, this is juxtaposed by extreme price sensitivity in the market. Companies are going to face constraints when it comes to pricing. If you're in a competitive sector, you're going to have to have a pricing strategy in order to retain market share. OEMs are definitely preferred in the market, as distributors for OEMs are kind of seen as added cost, and that's a perception within the market. So OEMs definitely have a better shot of success in the market than those who are distributing. The price sensitivity, that's a result of low GDP per capita across the board. It's a pretty low GDP, but really it's just the sheer size of the market that makes it interesting. Not just the economy, but also the population. As Michael alluded to, there's 220 million people in Nigeria. That's the 7th largest population in the world. So that's a substantial number of consumers. And Michael also alluded to the growth that Nigeria is expected to achieve in the coming years. by 2050, it's expected to have 400 million people. That's going to be the third largest country in the world behind China and India. So really a market that people need to be looking at as that population is growing. Demand is high and only getting bigger. I mentioned low GDP, but there's also a fairly substantial middle class within Nigeria. About 20% of the population is middle class. Interesting way to look at it is if population trajectories stay as they currently are, by 2050, when there's 400 million people in Nigeria, the middle class in Nigeria will be twice the size of that in the UK. So just something to consider. Obviously, folks don't look at Nigeria as having a booming middle class, but just based on the sheer size of the population, it's a place that you need to look twice at. I have the key sectors there listed on the right. I'm going to cover 3 of them that just kind of give a little bit of sense of some of the challenges and opportunities within the market. I'll start with automotive. This is one where you can really see the affinity between Nigeria and the US. There's a really limited capacity in Nigeria to produce vehicles. They only produce about 14,000 vehicles, and most of those are semi-knockdowns. On the other hand, they import they've imported over almost 750,000 vehicles to support the population. So that's 8 billion in imported vehicles. Most of those are used, and most of those are coming from the US. About 60% of the vehicles are coming from the US. So again, you see the connection between the US and Nigeria there. Vehicle parts are kind of the same story. 40% of those come from the US, large market there. Japanese brands are preferred. Obviously, branding and country of origin aren't the same these days, but there's definitely some loyalty to the US in the field of heavy trucks. You'll see some protectionist policies in the automotive industry. 35% duty on automobiles coming in, a ban on any vehicles that are over 15 years old. So some things that can really limit, some policies that can really limit opportunities within the market. This also promotes smuggling of vehicles. There's a pretty substantial vehicle smuggling industry within the country. I'll move on to consumer goods because I don't want to go over time. I'll cut out some things. Going back to population, large middle class, lots of people to consume. So a market you need to look at if you're in the consumer goods field. The diversification efforts and the localization efforts of the recent government have sought to reduce the dependence on imports in areas like textiles, food, those kind of things. But there are definitely some sectors of consumer goods where there are opportunities. You're going to face the foreign exchange crunch there as well, because if folks are buying at that parallel rate of there's about a 25% additional cost to buying US dollars if you're selling in US dollars. So again, pricing is going to be really important there. Most of the purchasing power in the country is in the centralized urban areas. You can kind of see that on the map there. Excuse me. And it's a pretty large country just in terms of land mass. So those engaging distributors might want to look at 1 or 2 more. And I see Natalie's on, so I'm going to give myself a 60-second countdown. Last industry to look at is ICT. Very high growth, very high opportunity sector. Lots of submarine cables are landing in Nigeria, including Google's Equano cable. It's the largest one that's going to be on the continent. So there's significant bandwidth coming in, and now there's a focus on bringing that bandwidth to the population. Nigeria has the most telecom users of any country, and about 55% of the growth in telecom users are suspected to be in sub-Saharan Africa are going to be in Nigeria. So there's opportunity there as they look to bring broadband, bring internet access to the masses. There's a lot of opportunities that kind of flow from there. A lot of the infrastructural backbone, like data centers, et cetera. And then this is supporting a growing tech scene, everything from small startups to large unicorns in fintech and on-demand logistics and entertainment have come out of Nigeria. So a lot of opportunity there. I'm not going to go on anymore because I want to be respectful of everyone's time and give everyone a chance. But good country to look at. It takes the correct approach, takes the correct company. but that's what we're here to tell you if there's a fit and what it would take to succeed here. And I hope to get the opportunity to talk to some of you guys a little bit more in depth on the opportunities here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David. I had the pleasure of working with David a little bit last summer, and Nigeria indeed is a complex place, a really friendly people who are very eager to consume U.S. products, and lots of potential there. So thank you so much for that presentation, David. We appreciate it. And we really appreciate all our colleagues in Africa. I know it's late for all of you there, so we appreciate your time. And you heard Mike say that we are working on a trade mission proposal. It's not completely finalized. We're hopeful it will be, but please stay in touch with me. This trade mission would be focused on the underserved business communities with a special focus on making those relationships and establishing those links. And it would be for August of next year. We would be going to South Africa, Ghana, and Nigeria. So stay tuned for that, and just be in touch with me if you think you're interested. So thank you, David. That will wrap up our presentations on Africa, and we're going to turn to another market here, which is Mexico. Obviously, Mexico, for most of our U.S. states, is going to be in the top 3 export market. It is our number 2 for us here in Missouri. It is of course, our close and one of our largest markets, along with Canada. And so I will turn it over to the Principal Commercial Officer there in Mexico City, Kenneth Duckworth, to present about the opportunities in Mexico.
Great. Thank you, Natalie, for that introduction. Bienvenidos a todos a México. I think I mentioned last time I did a presentation with y'all that I'm a sort of native-born Jayhawk, so I hope you won't hold that against me. I need to find there we go. So what I'd like to do is go over the exciting market and opportunities that exist in Mexico. So the U.S. commercial, Natalie went over a bit about what the commercial service does, but I'd like to highlight that so what we do here at the U.S. Commercial Service in Mexico is help U.S. exporters sell in Mexico, attract investment to the United States, and protect U.S. business interest. We have 3 offices in Mexico. We are, of course, here in Mexico City, where we also have a standards and an IP attaché. And
Sorry, we don't see your presentation.
What's going on?
Let's maybe just try it again.
Wait, I know what I did wrong. Where is it? Can you see it now?
It's coming, yes.
Okay, sorry about that. So as I was saying, so the U.S. Commercial Service in Mexico helps U.S. exporters sell in Mexico, attract investment to the United States, and protect U.S. business interest. We have 3 offices here in Mexico. We're in Mexico City, Monterrey, and Guadalajara. In Mexico City, we also have a standards and an IP attaché, and we are part of the commercial service network that Natalie talked about earlier during her presentation. So let's take a look. What is Mexico? Where is Mexico? Although an overview of statistics and rankings is not very exciting, it's useful to begin this presentation so you have an understanding of some of the defining characteristics of the Mexican market and some of the recent trends. Mexico is home to approximately 126 million people. It's best described as a large, urban, semi-advanced economy that operates at very distinct speeds. It is home to many world-class, highly competitive manufacturing companies and global firms. In some ways, Mexico is on a par with developed country peers around the globe. It has a growing middle class that has emerged over the last 2 decades as successive governments have emphasized growth-related economic policies have expanded Mexico's network of free trade agreements, and have worked to improve the business climate. That being said, there is a large amount of workforce informality. A large part of the population continues to live below or at the poverty line and is largely excluded from the benefits of Mexico's emergence onto the global stage. The current administration of Mexico's President Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador, whom we refer to as AMLO, is looking to address some of the systemic issues that are holding large parts of the population back. And AMLO has advanced an agenda that's focused on elevating the needs and interests of the more impoverished groups above all else. His approach sometimes puts him at odds with the business community, and it's a significant departure from Mexico's most recent administration, which left office in 2018. With respect to trade, let me start by saying that despite recent COVID-related economic impacts, we are generally optimistic on Mexico as a market for U.S. exporters. Mexico is our second largest good trading partner and is the second largest destination for U.S. goods exports. If you account for services, the United States and Mexico traded $700 billion in 2021, which puts Mexico as our third largest overall trading partner. That's behind, I believe, Canada and China. I think there's another chart on that. That's quite an astronomical amount of bilateral trade, and it amounts to more than $1.9 billion a day, or $1.3 million per minute. And while large multinational corporations contribute handily to this trade volume, it's worth noting that according to our U.S. Department of Commerce figures, more than 50,000 U.S. small and medium-sized businesses export to Mexico every year. So, further underscoring the importance of our commercial relationship with Mexico, you can see from this graph that U.S. exports to Mexico trailed only Canada in 2021 and far surpassed total U.S. merchandise exports to China. It's also worth highlighting here that something that I will talk about in a minute, and that's the idea of thinking about North America as an integrated commercial region, particularly since the entry into force of the North American Free Trade Agreement in 1994, which was replaced by the US-Mexico-Canada Agreement in 2020. Cross-border supply chains have flourished. US trade with Mexico and Canada has grown exponentially, and we increasingly make things collaboratively rather than just exchanging finished goods and services. Taking a closer look at the composition of US trade with Mexico, you can see that there is a fair amount of overlap between industry sectors in which US exports and imports are concentrated. This again is indicative of just how well established these cross-border supply chains really are and how dependent our respective economies have become upon one another in certain areas. I will get into a more detailed examination of our best prospect sectors for US exports in a moment, but it's important that companies seeking to explore opportunities in Mexico understand this macro perspective. Perhaps it goes without saying that given the total volume of trade, the importance of Mexico as a destination for US exports extends deep into the US heartland. While California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas all trade extensively with our southern neighbor, Mexico remains the first or second largest export market for a total of 25 states spread throughout all geographic regions of the country. And we at the Commercial Service field countless requests to support state and local level trade missions and outreach events every year. Returning to the Factory North America concept I mentioned earlier, Mexico is the region's manufacturing powerhouse. The country supports a strong manufacturing base across numerous industry sectors with heavily integrated cross-border supply chains in industries such as autos and auto parts, aerospace, and consumer electronics. In fact, Mexico exports more manufactured goods than the rest of Latin America combined, many of which contain a large percentage of US produced and supplied content. To put this production in perspective, Mexico is the sixth largest producer of passenger vehicles the world's second largest producer of televisions, the largest market for US produced auto parts, and a top market for US defense products, equipment, and services and the top market for US defense products, equipment, and services in Latin America. Beyond supply chains and manufacturing, there are several or various reasons for you to consider Mexico as an export market. None of them are particularly challenging to guess, but I would discuss them anyway. Of course, geographic proximity and cost. Business travel is generally easy, inexpensive, and convenient, and Mexico's location has a favorable impact on the price of logistics and other transportation services. As I said earlier, market size, diversity, and demand for US exports. Most products, US products and services can find ample opportunity, and a growing middle class is an increasingly large appetite for US produced goods and services. And of course, we have very strong historic, cultural, and people-to-people connections with Mexico. There's a high degree of familiarity with US brands, marketing, and ways of doing business that provide benefits to US firms considering market entry. Some of the other factors to continue, US qualifying goods benefit from zero duties and longstanding trade agreement relationships provide an extra degree of business climate transparency and predictability. And Mexico is relatively economically and politically stable. Economic growth is generally low, but stable, and no major political turmoil has occurred in several decades. But we do watch carefully the impact of the AMLO government's policies, particularly in heavily regulated or politically important industry sectors, such as energy, and there was one other one. Energy. Well, I'll leave it at energy for now. Mexico's US exporters without previous experience in Mexico often underappreciate the size, diversity, and distinct characteristics and opportunities to be found in different parts of the country. This is clearly not an exhaustive list of the country's major commercial centers, but they are Mexico's 3 largest cities and the locations where the commercial service has stationed or has offices. Oops, how do I go back? Mexico City is the political and economic capital. It is a natural starting point for any company interested in Mexico. It is a major manufacturing and distribution powerhouse and one of this world's largest cities with nearly 22 million people. It is centrally located near a number of other industrial centers such as Toluca, Puebla, and Querétaro. Monterrey in the north is Mexico's industrial and border trade hub. It is generally known for its pro-business environment, and it is home to major automotive, household appliance, electronic equipment, packaging, and heavy manufacturing industries. Guadalajara in the west is in Mexico's agricultural heartland and also known as its Silicon Valley. It is home to major R&D centers, distribution and logistics service providers, agribusiness, electronics, industrial process control, and food processing and packaging companies. It is the location of the largest expo center in Latin America, and they host many regional trade shows every year. Here are those same cities starred on a map of Mexico for those who may be unfamiliar with Mexico's geography. While commercial service specialists in Mexico are responsible for their industries countrywide, our offices in Monterrey and Guadalajara regularly assist U.S. firms with interest in the border region and our Western Mexico, respectively. Given many of the considerations I've already detailed about the depth and breadth of commercial ties between the US and Mexico, it should come as no surprise that we list more than 20 sectors as best prospects for US exporters. As you can see, these range from agribusiness and aerospace to cosmetics and packaging equipment. We describe each one of these industry sectors in detail in our country commercial guide, which can be accessed for free on our website, which is trade.gov/Mexico. If you're interested in specific information by subsector, I would encourage you to start there. when you're thinking of looking at how do I get into the Mexican market, the best strategy to enter the Mexican market is to find a local representative or distributor. With this, buyers feel secure that initial training, spare parts, and service will be provided. And this is especially important for companies that are looking to bid on Mexican government contracts. Because Mexico is very large and diverse, there are regional differences between different areas of the countries, and often representation locally will yield better results than a single nationwide distributor. It's not always effective to have one representative in Mexico City to cover the whole of Mexico, for example. Pricing is important, but not necessarily always the most important factor. Other factors include the ability to provide after-sales service, marketing support, help with product launch, etc. I was once asked, what is the international language of business? And the answer is, it's whatever language your customer speaks. So you should be prepared to provide brochures, catalogs, and printed materials in Spanish, and keep websites international user-friendly. And with regard to business etiquette and culture, I mean, it's really, you use common sense. Take the time to cultivate strong long-term relationships. People-to-people connections are important in Mexico. It's also key to remember that Mexican companies, especially large ones, are very hierarchical, so you need to make sure you are talking to the right people. Most commercial, business, and tourism hubs are safe for personal and professional travel, but we advise use common sense and consult the State Department's travel warning website for any detailed safety and security guidance. Finally, I want to talk a bit about foreign direct investment. As with trade, we have a healthy bilateral relationship when it comes to FDI. As of 2020, Mexico maintained a stock of more than $42.1 billion of FDI in the United States, and supporting some 82,000 jobs. And on this slide, you can see what some of those top industry sectors are, where U.S. companies are investing in the U.S. Next week, or through our investment promotion program, Select USA, our investment promotion team at the U.S. Embassy in Mexico City actively works to continue expanding this number. And just next week for the Select USA Investment Summit, we've actually recruited, I believe, the world's largest delegation, which is more than 40 Mexican firms. We're very proud of that. We don't need that slide. Finally, I just leave you with some of the resources that I discussed. You can visit our website, trade.gov/Mexico, for more information. Download our country commercial guide. Visit the U.S. Department of State's Mexico travel page for safety and security information. And of course, if you have any specific questions about how we might be able to help you, you can contact my boss, Steve Alley, the Senior Commercial Officer at stevealley@trade.gov, or myself, Kenneth.Duckworth@trade.gov. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kenneth. I know there's so much to say about Mexico. Incredible place. I miss it. A great place for business. Just lots more. And we have an incredible team there. So, if you're considering Mexico, you're in good hands. Thank you very much. So that concludes really the presentations for the markets that we've highlighted. And now that you have some excitement built up about where you think you may want to export, you're thinking, where do I get the resources? I need some funding, maybe some loans. We have just the person for you. We're going to be hearing next from Reginald Harley. He's the Export Finance Manager for the Small Business Administration, or the SBA as we call it. And then Reggie will also introduce us to one of his clients and one of our commercial service office clients, Dr. Saar, who will provide a company testimonial. So looking forward to hearing from you, Reggie, and I'll turn it over.
Thank you so much, Natalie. This is a pleasure to be able to participate. I'm assuming everything is okay insofar as viewing the presentation and hearing me?
Yes.
Great. Excellent. And I think you'll see in my email that I sent to you that I did change this slide deck, but I think this will be much more relevant and shorter than that which was originally selected. Thank each of you who've chosen to participate in this and listen in. I hope that so far it's been valuable to you, great information and thoughtful for sure. I know for me it's been uh, uh, just something more to learn about what's out there. And I think one of the biggest takeaways that you should have is just the kind of the large amount of resources that are available to you out there when it comes to your decisions that you have to make around whether or not exporting makes sense for those that haven't, and what the possibilities are to expand for those that are currently doing exporting. I'm the export finance manager with the U.S. Small Business Administration. There are 22, I believe, of us around the country that do this work. Our responsibility within SBA and as we face the nation as it is to be able to help identify financing resources that are available to those who are either exploring exporting or are currently exporting and wish to expand or do a shift. We have specific SBA programs that are available that are in the form of guarantees that we offer to lenders. And one of those things that we provide you that are out there looking to export is sort of a shortcut, if you will, to identifying the financing sources that may be available to you. And more specifically, if you are looking to, you're seeking some financing, we know that every lender out there is not going to be open to supporting what may wind up being foreign receivables. And so that we can shortcut that process for you by being able to identify the specific lenders in the market here in Missouri and in other parts of the country as well that may have an appetite to support that which you want to do. I have here a slide that just sort of shows the sales cycle, because when it comes to selling abroad, there are these things that you absolutely have to take into consideration around the development of the sale. And you've already heard from those in the various African markets and in Mexico around the market intelligence, that just skimming the top of what is available out there. And of course, meeting international buyers. All of this kind of information and more is available to you, and you need to know about that as you are trying to figure out your strategy and mapping out your plan for exporting. Production and the delivery, of course, is something that you have to look at, whether it's increasing or changing out the machinery, having an additional warehouse that you may have need of, a plant facility. That's something that you also have to think about. And finally, in fulfilling the order, how you're going to acquire the inventory that you may need, the labor costs that may be necessary as well when it comes to exporting, and these other issues, some of which were touched upon around the financing, international orders, and insurance and freight costs, etc. All of this and more are those things that you have to look at when it comes to thinking about exporting and what you have to take on. In order for that to happen, we have presented through the SBA the last three items on the screen, three different loan programs that are available to you. The Export Express, which is mostly for export development. If you're thinking about exporting and you're looking at opportunities to do so and you need a relatively smaller loan for that, then we can offer a guarantee to a lender to help you with that. And you see the other two on there as well, the Export Working Capital, which is more to fulfill orders that are already on the table, meaning that if you already have a purchase order and or a contract in hand from a foreign buyer, then this is something that you can be used. And then finally, if you're looking to purchase a building, do some build out of an existing building, purchase a warehouse, and or need equipment or term working capital, then the international trade loan is one that can be used in that regard. The latter two, export working capital and the international trade loan, up to $5 million. These Export Express is at $500,000 maximum dollar amount. And then I left the first one for last because that STEP grant is one that I think and especially after you listen to the next presenter, you'll understand the value of the STEP grant. The State Trade Expansion Program is a grant program that is out there and available. Missouri has been accessing it for several years, and they are right now had just submitted a grant proposal to the SBA for the coming year as well. So that these are funds that are out there and available to those who are looking to export. And there's some specific criteria. You can go to the website that I believe is at the International Trade and Investment Office of the state of Missouri. And you can see what the criteria are for being able to use or access the STEP grant, but it is a program that has grant money available to those that need to have sort of a subsidizing of certain activities that you may want to take on, whether it's optimizing your website, participating in one of those trade missions that were dangled out there by previous presenters and Natalie. Those kinds of things and more are available for some grant monies to reduce the cost of those activities that I've just mentioned. And so I think that it's a great opportunity. You may hear more about that from subsequent presenters, but I just want to just kind of dangle that out there to you as something that you need to look at as a possible way to get some things done that you may not otherwise be able to do so with your existing resources. So those are the funding pieces. That STEP grant, there's a little bit more information about that which can happen with it. I'm going to shift now and try to just finish up with the fact that when it comes to being able to sell abroad, there are into international markets, there are different ways in which that can happen. And this sort of lists out those payment methods, because the reality of it is when it comes to selling abroad, it's not like that which you may have grown accustomed to when it comes to selling domestically. You may offer payment terms, for example, when you sell domestically, of selling, net 10 or net 20 days or net 30 days even, and know that when it comes time to collect, that you have at your disposal a mechanism and the law that can help you with that. Those kinds of things kind of fall away when it comes to dealing with in some markets abroad. And so that there may be need to have some additional mitigating pieces in place in order to help at least raise the probability of your being able to collect when you're selling abroad. Now, you can sell cash in advance. That's the first one on there, where you get your money first and you then ship your product, or you then provide the service that you're offering. That is not always the case, especially if you're going to really be a competitive player in the global marketplace. You're probably going to have to sell on open account or some variation of that in order to compete in the marketplace. In order to be able to do that and know that you're going to get paid, or at least have some assurance that you're going to be paid, you're going to need to have something in place that can help out in that regard. So I'm going to talk to you just a moment about what's called credit insurance or receivables insurance that is available to you to help out in that regard. And I just want to put out the fact that it's really a good thing to be able to have that opportunity to sell abroad. And it's a good thing to be able to sell and know that you can mark up your product, for example, and to take into consideration whatever your costs may be if you have to borrow money to sell, to manufacture the product and ship it, et cetera, to provide that. That it's a good thing that you be able to provide that, and that there are those who are looking at purchasing products and services from the United States, but know that if they have to borrow the money in order to do so, that it's going to cost them a lot more. And this was talked about both by a couple of those that's presented on Africa, in addition to even in Mexico and other parts of the country of the world, where their interest rates are so much higher, and if they have to borrow, then it's going to cost them more, which means they may have only the ability to purchase less than they would otherwise like to. Well, they'd be more than happy to pay whatever the cost is for that you may incur to borrow monies in order to make this thing happen. Let's see if I can move to the next one. Just by way of an example, and I think I do need to update some of these numbers, but you see that the US at the bottom, we just got to 4% prime lending rate. You see that the prime lending rate in other parts of the world are far higher. It can be far higher, as much as, I mean, Russia is right now continuing to rise, and you see countries like Peru, but even Mexico that has something that's going to be closer to twice that which the United States has, Colombia even more. So that you see that when those that are purchasing from these countries are looking at the US as an opportunity, they see that it's much better just to pay whatever the US company may have in the way of carrying costs, rather than them having to borrow monies in their markets. Then there's this thing that I mentioned to you called credit insurance, and I know that the XM presenter is going to talk a bit more about this, and so I won't spend a lot of time on it, but simply to say that this is something that it is available that can help mitigate the risk that you may have when it comes to selling abroad. The export credit insurance can come either through a private sector source insurer or through XM Bank. Again, that's going to be talked about more. And these are the benefits that you'll find with the credit insurance that's offered out there, where it can allow you to offer more competitive payment terms. You're borrowing it against receivables, and so that you don't have to think about anything more than that which you're selling as that which is going to be securing this. And then finally, it's just something that in general helps sleep at night. And so I know that if you have a bank involved with you, that they're going to be more comfortable knowing that this is there, and you should be as well as a seller of products. It can mitigate against commercial risks as well as political risks, so that you see all of these things that are listed here that can happen, some of which were talked about by the prior presenters, that do happen in their countries and in many other countries of the world, that it can help cover that. I won't go into the cost or anything of that sort, but I just wanted to make sure that you knew that these things are available, both this credit insurance as well as SBA financing, the guarantee that we can offer. I stand ready as a resource to talk to you more about what you're trying to do out there in the way of sales, and what may be available to you, not just in terms of the pots of money, but also the particular lenders that may have an appetite to support that which you're wanting to do. So give me a call, reach out to me, and I can help out with being able to identify where that money is to help you with your marketing and sales and waiting on your payment. I thank you for this opportunity to just talk to you a bit about what SBA has to offer, and I'll conclude my part of the presentation at this point. Natalie, do you want me to just go on and do the introduction?
Yes, thank you, Reggie, for that presentation on the SBA. And if you would please, since you know Dr. Saar and you've worked with her, why don't you introduce us, and then we'll turn it over to her. Thank you.
I absolutely will, and I have to figure out as well how to stop sharing here. There we are. You may not know this, but I am actually located in New Orleans, Louisiana, and through the work that I do here in Louisiana, I had the opportunity to meet Dr. Saar, who reached out to me maybe 2 or more years ago, just telling me about that which she was trying to do with a company that she had formed, and the opportunities that she had before her. And I thought, and actually Natalie was the one that really came sort of knew that one of the best ways to convey what is the whole idea of exporting and to talk about the pros and cons, those things that make it worthwhile and those challenges that may be before you, and even more importantly, how to prepare yourself to be successful in exporting, is to have someone who actually has gone through this talk to you about what may be available out there and what at least they went through in order to get to where they are in the process. And so Dr. Sarr has a company called Espoir Global, I think DBA, WALAMED, and it's a very interesting product niche and services niche that she has been able to penetrate and take on. And that she's doing wonderful things with this company. And she has a really, really bright horizon before her to take on more. But she wanted to take some time and was very generous with her time to share with you how she got where she is and the kind of support she's received in order to go forward in her business ventures. So Dr. Sarr, if you can come on and take over in this regard.
Thank you, Rich.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Natalie. So I'm just gonna go over our path, our experience in starting our business, and then going through everything we went through to start, and then to send our first export to Haiti. So we started thinking about our business during COVID. So we were confined, and then we have weeks going nowhere at home. So when we started putting together ideas about how we can move to something else. So before COVID, we were doing some business that were linked to the school system. And then when COVID hit, we have to stop everything. So for me, staying at home, it was just start thinking about maybe a better business that would allow us, even if there is a pandemic or hurricane, I can still stay home and then keep working. So then because I started working, I was working in the past with the United Nations. I started looking into what I can keep doing with them in terms of providing goods and services. So, and then I received a bid on providing services. So I didn't know what to do with it. And then I was thinking about if I bid for it and I get it, how do I get funding? So I started researching, and then I received information about Reggie, and then I reached out to him. So reaching out to him, he asked me about whether the business is set up, whether I have a business plan, financial plan, where was I in terms of the business development. So at that time, I only had ideas. I didn't have a business plan. I didn't have financial plan. So he recommended me several resources, and that's what I did. So and when we started thinking about the business idea, because at that time I was just working, I worked internationally, so I know some of the regions very well. I know the culture, I know, and I provided services there. So I thought we would work on to doing export in the African countries, because I worked in several African countries, and then try to grow it. And once we started growing, we can maybe move back to growing also our domestic business. So that's how we thought about setting up our business. So our business is focused on providing telemedicine hardware and software. As a health worker myself and a global health professional, so my focus was mostly in the healthcare area. So we thought about setting up something to provide telemedicine hardware, medical devices, because I worked in Africa. I know that there's a gap. There's a huge gap about access to these type of products. So, and at the same time, as a public health professional and a health professional, I would keep up with teaching. So I've been also teaching at the university, at some universities. Keep up with teaching so I can keep generating some revenues for the business while I'm working on the export part of the business. So I consider myself I still consider myself as new to export and then new to markets, because even though I worked in the African continent, I worked there as a service provider, but not as someone who sells products. So I consider myself as new in the areas I want to export to. So, and the path we took was, with the help of Reggie, was to reach out to the Louisiana Small Business Development Center, and also at the same time with the Louisiana Economic Development. So, and then we got involved in and certified for different programs that we got involved in. We got involved in a lot of training, a lot of webinars. So we learned everything, every topic that is involved in export, we learned about it. We attended those webinars, we took notes, we study. It's like we went back to school and then we study how things work. So we worked with the Louisiana Development, Economic Development, LBDC, and then we got our business plan, financial plan, everything set up. Then we moved working with the U.S. Department of Commerce, attended a lot of their boot camps. So we worked with the U.S. Department of Commerce back with LED to get our STEP grants, which allows us to build our website. So, and which was a great help for us because it removed most of the stress of focusing on how do we get a great website that will allow us to do our business properly. So, and then the U.S. Department of Health, we had different help, and then we learned a lot about most of the things we needed to get going. So we attended also some conferences. The first phase of our business, working through the business, was to really learn about things. And then the more we learned, we realized that, so the important things are in the details. So you can learn a lot of things. When we start practicing it, it will sound a bit challenging. So that's what we did. We took a lot of courses and then we went on. So right now we are like, we almost done working with the U.S. Department of Commerce. We're planning to keep up working with maybe getting international partners, working with maybe David and Lori in Ghana and Nigeria, because they are part of our country of interest. And we also back with the SBA trying to get funding for our export business. So, and then we encounter challenges. As I said, challenges are in the details on how to do things. So if you've never done export, you need to be careful about how you set up your paperwork, how you set up your business, what you need to know, all those things. You need to really be careful and then learn things before you ship your first business. So, and the other thing I would advise would be to ask questions. Whenever before you start doing something, just reach out to the right person and ask questions. They will guide you to the resources that are available to you. And then, so you're gonna get help doing a lot of things. So I listed here some of the challenges that I saw. Building your e-commerce website that would be adapted to the environment where you're gonna do export. That is important. So costing is important. If you do costing the wrong way, you're going to be paying much more than you planned for. Getting an export insurance. So we were able to get export insurance from Exim Bank. So we have it set up. but we're still trying to get buyers to be registered to be added to our insurance. Sometimes they don't know much about it, so they're not very comfortable accepting to be added to it. And then the whole process of credit history, they're not. Some buyers are not used to that, so they will keep asking, why do I need to do that? So all those things, mostly for the African market, those are challenges you might be facing if you're interested in the African market. So other challenges are linked to the type of products you're selling. We're doing medical products. There are a lot of international quality standards you need to respect. And sometimes it's difficult to get those information from the manufacturer. So those are also challenges we have had in the past. So you need to maybe keep in mind. Yeah, so that's all I wanted to say. So these are the list of challenges I encounter, and I know that you guys need to think about doing export to African countries. Thank you for your attention, and yeah, Natalie, thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Sarr. It's, I think the most valuable thing that we can do is have people like you who have gone through the process and continue to go through the process.
Yeah.
Very valuable information and your experience. And of course, we're happy to put you in touch with our colleagues in those African markets that you're interested in.
Yes.
I wanted to highlight one of the points you made, which is very important. Even at the beginning of your journey, you realized that your website was key, and localizing your website. So I mentioned that at the beginning. We have, for a very nominal fee, a fantastic service that we can look at your website and point to all the different changes and tweaks that you can make to make it more friendly to those international buyers.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much for that. We
Yeah.
really appreciate your time and you taking the effort to walk us through it.
Okay.
And last but not least, we really need to look at the offerings of our U.S. Export Credit Agency, and Ex-Im Bank is it for the United States. Some of our largest competitors around the world have their own banks, and we're lucky enough to have someone to tell us about the services that are available to you to make sure that you get paid, or to ensure that your buyers have the means to buy your products when they're located overseas. So I want to welcome Edens Dufresne here. He's going to, I believe, share his screen and walk us through the website and tell us all about Ex-Im services.
Thank you, Natalie, and for hosting this event, and to all participants. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to be here with us. I guess there are a lot of points that have already been covered about Ex-Im and who we are, but I'll just go over a couple points. And it's fascinating to see, Dr. Sarr, you've used all of the different agencies who are on the call, not just the U.S. Commercial Service, not just SBA, but also Ex-Im. And you talk about the Export Credit Insurance. So I'll try to keep things brief. But before I share my screen, I would like to take a couple minutes just to introduce the agency. If you're not familiar with Ex-Im, Ex-Im stands for the U.S. Export-Import Bank. And we are a federal government agency that is independent, and we've been around since the 1930s. 1930s, that's a long time. And we just, our mission, which is pretty simple, that is to sustain and create U.S. jobs by the facilitation of U.S. products and services. We try to do that by leveling the playing field, as Natalie mentioned. In other countries, they have similar agencies that are known as the Export Credit Agency, ECAs. Then they serve similar functions, that is to support their own companies. So when you are competing internationally, you might run into different companies that are trying to get the somewhat same contracts. And that's where Ex-Im would come in, just to leverage the power of the federal government. We don't compete with the private sector. We just try to fulfill some of the gaps that exist as we are trying to level the playing field. Me, I work specifically in the minority women owned business outreach division. What we do is to participate in events like this and engage in outreach educational programs, webinars, conferences, and so on, and try to target the underserved business communities, which include veteran businesses, women owned businesses, LGBTQ, individuals with disabilities, and a lot of different other groups as well. Since the past fiscal year, Exim has authorized over $300 million allocated to minority-owned businesses, which include women-owned and so on that I mentioned before. And the reason why I mention those things, because a lot of times, you might go to conferences, you want somebody to speak with you, and Exim is kind of there, our division to hand-holding to kind of guide you as to what you need to do in order to help your company get ready to export. Why are you exporting? I think the U.S. Commercial Service did a great job in covering the different markets around the world, like Ghana, South Africa, Mexico. And that allows you to see the opportunities that exist outside of the U.S. So being able to diversify your market opportunity is also a plus, as Dr. Asar just showed us with her company and her success. And by going outside of the U.S., believe it or not, just about 1% of companies are actually exporting, even though 95% of consumers exist outside of the US. So I know, we've been doing presentations and there's somebody that's still on the call that's been here for over an hour. It would be good to hear some of you guys, if you could introduce yourself in the chat. What are your companies doing? What are some of the barriers and questions that you might have? Ask some questions in the chat. I know we'll have some time to go over some Q&As, but definitely do that. I'm curious as to if you're not exporting, what's going on? What's stopping you? And as you can see, there are a lot of resources available to you, not just the U.S. Commercial Service, but also SBA and the other organizations that the U.S. Commercial Service partner with, like the chambers that are here as well, the Asian and Black chambers of commerce. Exim is here again to minimize the risks that are involved when it comes to exporting, and we try to ensure the U.S. companies have a peace of mind when they are competing for those particular contracts. And we might be asking, okay, well, how do we do that? A couple of individuals mentioned the export credit insurance, and Dr. Saw was mentioning, adding buyers to her insurance. Well, we have a couple programs. One is the export credit insurance, and the other is the working capital. For the export credit insurance, it's pretty simple, really. You receive a purchasing order, or you're trying to get a contract, and you're trying to offer terms to those companies in a different country, whether that's 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and so on. In the event that you don't get paid, you want to ensure that you are not going to lose out everything. That's when Exim would come in with the insurance that protects you. It's a risk protection, the same way that you have insurance on your house, on your cars, even on yourselves. That is protecting you against non-payment due to commercial and political risk. It's a sales tool that you can leverage when you are looking to compete internationally by offering those terms. And it also has a monetary value that you can use if you're looking for some funding as well. We do offer a working capital program in similar fashion that it works as the SBA, where we provide guarantee to delegated lenders like Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and so on. If you receive a purchasing order and you need to buy materials, you need to cover labor costs, as well as some overhead as well, that's where the working capital functions. We just added a brand new program for the domestic finance. If you're looking to expand, you want to build some sort of manufacturing facility and so on, that's what the domestic finance is here for. So I know somebody mentioned the STEP grant, and the reason why that's also important. For the export credit insurance, we have single buyer and multi-buyer policies. And there is a premium attached to that. Usually that's around 60 cents for every $100. However, there are some states that do participate in the STEP grant where you can utilize that fund to cover that premium. So I don't want to go too much in depth, and you can contact me. I'll provide my contact information. But there are a couple more things I would like to go over with you. We don't just cover manufacturers, just products, also services. Sometimes I work a lot with individuals who are market research or business consultants. And a lot of times those individuals might think, well, we can't export because we don't have a physical and tangible product. Can services be exported? Yes, they can. And I've worked with a lot of them, and they are doing phenomenal, especially during this time. So there are a couple of things left, and I know we're short on time, so I'll make sure that we are covering all the bases. And even if you're not exporting, definitely have a sit down with one of us here, and we can look at what your company is offering and what resources and tools that you can utilize to help you. As you can see, there's a lot of information out there, and this is why those events are hosted, just so you are aware as to what's out there. And of course, there are some limitations. So I'll share my screen right now. If you want to get some more information, exim.gov is the place to go. There's a lot of information on this website. So I'm just going to show you some of the ways to utilize it. And I'll also post some of those links in the chat once I am done. If you go to exim.gov, this is the welcome page, and you can see at the top here, community, resource solutions, resources, contact. But also right before that, you have about Exim, leadership, etc. But the main thing is you can look at different events where we do collaborate with a lot of other organizations and agencies such as the U.S. Commercial Service and even SBA. And as well, I host a lot of events myself. So we can try to reach as many groups as possible. So if you can click on events, that'll take you to the event page. You can see them. But the main two things I want to touch on real quick. So if you were to click on resources, I'm just going to click on that. And then you scroll down and you can see here, jump to page. Two things. One is the REP program. This stands for the Regional Export Promotion Program. We partner, like I mentioned before, our office with a lot of different organizations like NASBITE, WeBank, and so on. When a company may not be ready 100% to export, there are some basic, resources that they can use. The rep members are here. They are located in all different states, or you can contact them, and then they'll sit down with you, again, provide you some educational resources and even some local contacts as well. That's what they are there for, to help you. So that's part of the program with Exim, and that is coordinated by one of my colleagues, Eric Stevens. So definitely that's another resource. Again, I'll post those links in the chat, so don't worry about them, but I just want to show it to you how you can get there in case you happen to be on exim.gov. And the other link I want to show you is here. That is the country limitation schedule. Every day I speak with about 4 or 5 businesses. It's a lot of more small businesses that are looking to export. This is one of the first places I usually go. Say, hey, you're interested in exporting X country. And I go in this list to see whether or not we are open. Now, we are open in over 180 countries. Sometimes there might be some restrictions. That's why I go over this page. This is updated constantly, daily, just to make sure that there are no other issues going on, as we saw earlier this year with the Ukraine and Russia war, where that had to be updated. So if you're looking to export into Russia, that's not happening currently. Maybe in the future, but as of right now, we're close. So we always have to revise this list just to ensure if we are going to take on the risk to protect you, this is somewhere that we are open, and there might be some small restrictions that we have to take into account. And that can also influence, with some of the terms as well, whether or not the policies can be used for public and private. So if I was to simply click on one, and I can click on Germany, so there is no restrictions in Germany up to 1 year, 1 to 7 years for both public and private sector. And somebody mentioned Ghana, and there are a couple of notes here. We're open in Ghana. There are, in terms of restrictions, but there are a couple of notes here that we might have to review just to make sure the deal or the transaction that you're working with, that Exim can cover it 100% without much restrictions. So that's a lot of information. I'll post those in the chat, but I just want to go over those real quick, and I wanted to leave some time for Q&A. So I know some of you guys have introduced yourselves in the chat. Definitely would like to read them, but definitely want to hear some questions that you might have for us. Again, my name is Edens Dufresne. I'll post this in the chat as well. Well, you have my contact and phone number in case you have any questions and you want to sit down with us. We do consultations one-on-one on a regular basis, or if not me, one of my colleagues will be able to follow up with you. Natalie, thank you again for inviting me, and hopefully this has been enlightening to you, especially the business owners, and hopefully we can connect once this is over offline, and we can see how EXIM and the other agencies can assist you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Edens. I know it's not easy to try to condense all this information into a short amount of time, but you're all pros. I think the point here is that we're very fortunate to have a very rich ecosystem, not only in our neck of the woods, but at the federal government level, state government level, and we all work together to make sure that you get off to a good start or you grow your exports. That's what we do. So again, we will send out the presentations and all the contact information so you have it. I see that there were some questions in the chat, so we're going to ask Margaret to maybe condense, summarize, or just give us some questions and see who to best answer them. Margaret.
Thank you, Natalie. Here's a question from Phil that says, hi, my name is Phil. I'm not exporting yet, but starting to plan my business to export financial technology services and shipping and logistics. Where to start has been a major challenge. Thanks everyone for the presentation. Do you have anyone that can cover the Togo market and how to get into Ghana's market?
Those are separate questions, I see. Sure. Well, let's start with maybe the Togo Ghana. If let's see, is Lori still on? Or anybody from SSA that can answer that question?
What was if you can rephrase the question real quick?
Yes, the questions were, do you have anyone that can cover the Togo market? And then the second one was, how do I get into the Ghana market?
Oh, okay, I see. Mike.
Mike. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Hi, yeah. I know it's getting a little late here in sub-Saharan Africa, so I think a couple of my colleagues have dropped off. However, yeah, we're always happy to put you in touch with the right people. You know, I think Togo is probably covered by Ghana or Nigeria. I'm not sure which post, but either way, we work with our State Department colleagues there who can help. I guess I would want to ask, why Togo? And I think perhaps a better, a better place to start would be, to have a consultation with some of the local colleagues here in Missouri, who you've already heard from, who might be able to help you get better export ready. And they have an incredible amount of tools to help align the correct market with your product or service. So you might want to export to Togo, which is great, but there might be better countries more suited to your product and service. That's my answer for that. I don't know if anyone else wants to weigh in.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. And we can certainly help you get export ready if you're not yet. We can work through the BDC, Small Business Development Center. There is a good contact of ours that works on the international side to help you get there. And as Mike said, if we don't actually have a team in a market such as Togo, we partner with the State Department to deliver the same sort of services. So if you're ready, we're happy to put you in touch with those. But I think as a first step, Margaret and I will reach out and put you in touch with the right specialist here in the St. Louis area. All right. Anything else, Margaret?
Yeah, and the same for Ghana. There's a couple people that were interested in Ghana. Our colleague that couldn't stay, Laurie Kelleher. We can put you into contact with her for Ghana. There's another question. It says, from the presentations, it appears that exporting is very challenging endeavor and filled with convoluted steps with many risks. What is the success rate for a small business manufacturer engaging in exporting their products for the first time? And the same business 1, 2, 3, or 5 years out. And then to further that question, if it's for a period of 5 years or more, what is their revenue range?
I'm not sure if any of my colleagues have those types of statistics. I know I don't. I agree with the first part of the comment that it's not an easy or simple process, but it's a very achievable process if you lay the foundation for continued success. I think the flip side is just because our world is so connected now, people will get an inquiry through their website, and they will just start shipping product without doing their homework. And then they either have a payment and then they get really disappointed, and they either lose money or lose business. So that's the way to not do it. And that's why we do these type of webinars, is that we can hold your hand from the very beginning, the initial steps, as we mentioned, to get you export ready, and then put you in the hands of our colleagues, whether it's on the financing side or really finding those valid contacts in the market, right? I mean, I think it's just foolish nowadays to just be lured by the prospect of making a sale to someone you don't know in a market you've never done business with, when you don't know about exchange controls and other topics. So while it's complicated, you need to do.
Is that me or is somebody close?
No, it froze
No,
for me
I
as
think we
well.
lost Natalie for a while. I think now you're back.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Could I piggyback on what you're selling, Natalie? I think, for the first time exporter, it is a very daunting prospect, and a challenge, but also an opportunity. One of the things from my experience working with small businesses is those who have taken advantage of the help that we in the commercial service can provide, starting with, as Natalie says, export counseling. We can help you identify a market for your product or service. And we start out with small steps, and we introduce you to potential partners. We link you up with the resources at Exim Bank or SBA for working capital finance, export working capital finance. We can really help a business, find opportunities where if they're sort of at their limit with their local or their national market, they can expand their business. One thing you have to be careful is not to move too fast, because you don't want to, get into a market and then find you can't meet the demand for your product. But the resources are there. It's a process that you have to go through. And I can give you an example. When I worked at our U.S. Export Assistance Center in Maryland, and I worked directly with a small company on Maryland's Eastern Shore. They were they were a niche manufacturer of a defense product. They working with them, and they had some limitations on where they could sell their product. They quote unquote didn't want to sell them to the bad guys. So I mean, even though they were not export controlled, and we were able to identify 4 to 5 potential markets for them in Europe and in Asia, and they're now exporting to 6 markets. Last time I talked to them, where they weren't before. So it's completely possible to be done, but it's something that requires some patience and also some dedication of your time to doing.
Absolutely, and we heard Dr. Saar say exactly that. All the homework she had to do to put in, and
Yeah.
she did it in record time.
Mhm.
Natalie, I just want
And
to.
my point is that the help is here, and people should be talking with us about what it is
Right.
we can do and how we can help them develop an export
All right.
plan for their business.
Yeah, and Natalie, I just want to add last thing. So we here at XM with the MWB team, we host an event called Export Readiness every second and fourth Fridays of the month, where we go over some basic things that companies can do. But I definitely agree with Kenneth. The main thing is to contact one of the individuals on the call, and anybody here would definitely sit down with you and try to figure out how they can best assist. So I just want to add that. But Natalie, thank you for this event, and to all the participants. It was great being here, and hopefully you learn a lot and you can help your company grow.
Thank you so much. I see there are more questions, and that's wonderful. What we will do, as promised, is we will field those questions to the relevant presenters, and we will answer them in writing via email. Before we close this out, I do, of course, want to thank all the panelists once again for your time, especially our colleagues in Africa. It's way past quitting time there, so thank you so much. We appreciate it. And I wanted to give Eduardo Platon, he's still, I wanted him to come on camera if he could and say a few words, because really the whole idea of this joint webinar was when I just went to Eduardo and said, hey, you're the new president and CEO of the Hispanic Chamber. Let's do something about exporting. And he just has this vision. He jumped on it and reached out to all the other wonderful partners. And so I wanted to recognize you, Eduardo, and just let you close this out.
Yes, I just want to say thank you so much, Natalie. I think you really put an incredible event together. A lot of quality speakers here. We had the Black Chamber. I want to say thank you to Marvin Steele. We had the Asian Chamber. I want to say thank you to Sean Mullins, but also Ham Cole. I want to say thank you to the African Chamber, Jeffrey, the Vets Bids. I want to say thank you to Michael Fitzpatrick. So we have a lot of great people working together to make it happen. I think the vision is really to help SMEs to go overseas, right? So we can help them to really do business internationally. I think that a lot of people might not be ready immediately, but maybe down the road, in maybe a year, maybe 2, they can really think of that. And give also the minority owned business the opportunities to diversify its revenue sources going overseas. A lot of great things were commented today, a lot of possibilities out there. And we at the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, we are so excited, to be part of this. So I just want to say thank you all for being here today. I hope we can do that again.
Thank you so much. Great partners here in the region. Thank you to Maria, who really did all the marketing and the coordination. And thanks again to all the presenters. Much appreciated, and we'll follow up with everyone. Have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.